I'm going to let you in on a secret, and that is that my van build is actually nearly done. But I'm posting my build videos from 4 years ago. But this week I have had some computer and phone issues. So instead, I'm going to post a recap of what I've learned so far on the videos that I've posted. So I hope you enjoy this. Hey, I'm Issa, and I'm learning to convert this van all by myself while traveling out of it as much as possible. One of the very first things I did in my van build was play pretend. I made cardboard cutouts of where I planned to have everything, and I'm so glad I did this. I even marked out where my little sink would be and how much counter space I planned to have. This gave me a real feel of what this space was going to eventually look and feel like, even though I couldn't use these structures or even sit on this makeshift bench that I ended up doing. And saving my boxes and cutting them out and doing the design to kind of make this stay haphazardly could have been seen as a waste of time, but I am glad that I followed through and did all of this. But I will say, after traveling in my van many months at a time, I kind of wish I flipped this and had the counter over here, but it works great for me, and I'm very happy that I started with this. So cardboard practice. Next was just sound deadening. This was super easy. The cost, it might not be very cost effective, but I am glad I did it because this was a tin can rattling around for a long while. Next, I moved on to insulation, and I don't think I needed to do it all in one full swoop. I think it would have been okay to do it piecemeal depending on what I was building over it at the time. But it is what it is, and I did what I did. I do think I placed too much value in cutting out the exact appropriate shapes and exact appropriate dimensions. It really wasn't that big of a deal, and the job got done. If I did this again, I would absolutely use the thin slit which I used here. I really do like the insulation. Over time in the heat though, it has gotten a little bit dusty. Now moving on to what really became my first big van project where I would cut into the small problem, I did need the right size ladder. So once that was handled, I was able to get onto the roof to install a max fan roof fan. I would absolutely install this fan again, and I would also use that trim ring that I got from DIY Van. Another thing would be weatherproofing the inside of the van. So I took it apart and basically added protection to the electrical components, and I think that's why my van still works so well 4 years later. Also, I would make my own frame again. My frame wasn't perfect, but I was glad for the skills I was gaining, and it's worked great this whole time. And if I could choose to, I would make sure I didn't do this in a thunderstorm. Alright, now we are on to van headliner shelf. This project was so great. It really helped build my confidence and my skills. And I've said it before, I'm saying it again. I think this is a really great beginner-friendly project, and I wish this was the first project I'd really started working with when I started the van build. It was a safe way to learn the tools, easy way to make mistakes. I was on the ground, I wasn't using and practicing a jigsaw on the roof of my van. Also, the company I bought the template for had really good customer service, 10 out of 10. I would do again, would buy again. I found both the instructions and the installation of the project really easy to understand and follow through with. And it was super satisfying to have this project complete and also look so good. Of course, I did end up insulating underneath the headliner kind of liner there on top of the shelf, and that made a huge difference because so much sun just hits that area of the van and warms it up easily. But now here's something I don't recommend, would not do again, and they don't even sell it anymore. This weather stripping along the edge of the van, although aside from those wrinkles, I thought it looked really nice, but over time it just started to crumble. It was very dry, the color faded, much like my plastic trim has also faded in the sun. But it's completely unnecessary. This van is meant to take water on, and if it gets in between the side panels, it will weep out the bottom of the door. So this weather stripping, I give it a 1 out of 10. I ended up removing it, and I speculate they don't sell it anymore for that reason. A special mention for the headliner gray stain that I did. I am still so deeply in love with it. It looks OEM, and I love looking up when I'm just like sitting or driving, or it's basically where I kind of store a little net above it now, and I can look at this beautiful wood grain, and it just really makes me appreciate just the beauty of the wood. Now on to one of the scariest projects. This is the window install. I was so nervous to do this because if I mess these windows up,
it was going to be so visible, everybody would see what a fool I am taking this project on. But thankfully, cutting into the van first with the fan where no one would see it and doing okay did help me gain confidence, plus a lot of research and talking to other people. At the end of the day, if I messed up, I'd have to have a person fix it. Worst case scenario, but everything is fixable, right? That was the mentality I had to go into it with, to just go ahead and do this. And it actually turned out really well. I was incredibly proud of myself. Now, I did buy these Satsung trim rings. They have since given you options that you can have these corners like flare out instead of round like these. I would not do these again in the rounded corner. At the time I bought mine, I didn't have an option for anything otherwise though. And trying to get the blinds to stay over the windows and not have additional framing outside of this trim ring was a real hassle for me. But the rings themselves, the company, I would still recommend. I would just probably get the cornered ones, or honestly, I'd probably make my own frame next time. But I had already invested a ton of money into them. I ended up making them work, and I ended up getting 4 beautiful turn overland windows into my van. To this day, I still absolutely love the windows. I love the company. Their customer service was fantastic. 10 out of 10, 100% would get these windows again. This next project, I did debate a little over removing this floor. Now, my factory floor was in good condition. It was a little bit warped and there was no insulation. I did decide to remove it, and I had a professional install this removable seat. This removable seat has been wonderful. Customer service with this place, fantastic. The seat, fantastic. It is heavy though. Ultimately, for me, I don't use it as much for my niece as I was hoping to. I had grand plans that we would take camping trips regularly, but with her school schedule, my work schedule, and just life, that has not happened. But it still has allowed us to take at least one camping trip and a couple family trips with my sister as well. I've picked her up from school in it a couple of times, and I always feel like she's safe. I absolutely recommend this seat. The company, it was fantastic, but me personally, with the way I use it, I would not do this again. I did decide to insulate the van, and I'm glad I did. You'd think this XPS foam would be really squeaky. Once everything was installed and the silicone and adhesives and all that, it wasn't. It's been great. It did add maybe an inch and a half total to the floor, which I was very okay with. I'm only 5'6", and I have since taken the van as cold as like 27 degrees. We've been in the snow. I've never had issues with this. It's been great. Another thing that I really like about this floor is my lipstick trick. I am so glad I thought of this, and it has worked for multiple projects, but it worked really well here, cutting out the foam board for the XPF foam on that like seat bracket. So the seat's removed here. And I'm still in shock that this like lipstick trick foam board TikTok video ended up going viral. It was so fun to have that little moment over this, what seemed like just a silly little trick. And of course, like viral moments are, it was fleeting, but it really did help provide motivation to me to keep doing this, both to keep recording and posting these silly little videos. Now, this is mini cell that I put down in the grooves underneath the XPS foam board, but I don't know if I'd need it. I'm 50-50 on that, but this floor installation as a whole and the way I did my cutout for hiding that seat bracket, I'm incredibly happy and proud of the way it all turned out. And if I did this again, I think I would just do the same thing. I might go without the mini cell, but I would absolutely do this floor as it is all over again. The height it added isn't that big of a difference to me. And the comfort, so to speak, that it provides, plus having wood to drill structures later into, provided a lot of benefit to me. It just helped stabilize my van build as a whole. Now, the biscuit joinery that I did, I might not do that again. I might just use some other technique. But this vinyl floor, on the other hand, 100%, 10 out of 10, love it. Also, the pattern I got, it hides dirt and dog hair and cat hair so well, and it's so easy to clean. I even dropped my screwdriver sharp end down, and it essentially self-heals. I put a little touch of silicone over it to make it better, and it's held up so great over the 4 years. And even this trim strip, I had mentioned in the other video that I was worried that it kind of would have this wave that would form over time, but it hasn't progressed. It stayed the same, and I really do love the look of that floor kind of continuing down here. So I would also trim out using the vinyl pieces, but I would leave it longer. I cut it too short, so rather than adding a piece, I would just fold it over. And while I might not love plastic, it's a part of the world and it's what I decided for the van floor, and it is held up very nicely. So I would absolutely do the floor again just as I did, but of course made improvements where I did my cutouts. Now this project, for some reason, I did a really bad job recording, but these are the sliding door bump stops and I really love these. I give these a 10 out of 10 and I would absolutely do it again. I ended up doing two. Now let's move on to the project that I would absolutely never repeat. These are van bump outs by Flarespace, and they're meant to increase your sleeping width. And they do that, but the amount that they do it with is nominal and not worth it in my opinion. I'll get to the real reason why I wouldn't recommend these. These are for me a 0 out of 10. But first, I want to tell you another thing I wouldn't do. I would not sand down these primed kind of glossed finishes. I would have buffed out the scratches that it came with and left them as they were. What I had decided to do was finally sand these and then use 4 coats of rhino liner like truck bed liner spray on these. I thought it was going to be super durable and last a long time. 4 years later, I was really wrong. The wind and the rain has essentially sloughed off most of the covering that I had on it. And as we speak, my van is currently in the shop and these are going to be painted. Now my van's actually in the shop because someone hit me, but that's beside the point. These just happen to also be getting painted. Now let's move on to my disdain for this company, these particular bump outs. I will say there, I think, is at least another company that does it. I can't speak about them. It could be very useful, but my experience with Flarespace personally was horrible. These bump outs are supposed to be custom for this exact type of van. Everything is supposed to fit. It's supposed to fit the window that they sell with it, that of course I paid extra for, and they are a pretty penny. This was a few $1,000s between the bump outs and the windows that I decided to get with them. I budget where I can, but I splurge where I thought it'd be worth it, and this absolutely was not worth it. It started when I saw the directions were just slightly lacking, but very figure outable. There's plenty of tutorials and videos online to get through that. The real kicker came when this particular flare did not actually fit the window ring, this one here, that it was supposed to. So I attempted to contact Flarespace multiple times. They said that I could take it in and have someone fix it and they'd reimburse me, which I had very little trust based on their poor communication skills. They also said I could do what I'm doing here. Yeah, thanks. Overall, all my interactions with Flarespace and customer service was horrible. These are 0 out of 10, would never do again. Alright, let's lighten the mood and do something budget friendly. This is the Chinese diesel heater I installed, and I really like it. Some parts were a little complicated just for me to get the wire chase going, but I would do this again, although mine's not working right now. But I think it's just the fuel lines need replaced because I hardly use it. I didn't keep it up like I should have, but I would do this again. 10 out of 10 recommend. When this baby works, oh, we are very toasty in the van. Oh look, we're gonna drill more holes in the van. What a surprise! If you already saw this video, you may have noticed what an absolute terrible hole this was for me to drill. Eventually I got it working. This was the biggest issue with that, but that's because I had a dull hole saw. I did figure a way around it, ended up getting the hole, and then this is where the 30 amp power is going to be going into the van. So that ended up working out just fine. What I would do again is somehow try to create a circular frame, or maybe they sell them now, to put behind. So not only would I do these locking bolts and the butyl tape, I would also have a frame that these bolts would have gone through just to give a little bit more stability to this area. I do like the position of where I put this and its friend next door there. That's the solar intake from like external panels that I use. And 10 out of 10, I would also do another solar panel port. I have a couple 100-watt solar panel that I've used on various trips to help boost up the battery bank. Now, of course, you do need a chassis ground. I would do a chassis ground again. I wouldn't put it here though. If you saw my electrical wall build, you'll see that I'm gonna cover this area up, which is fine, but I would like to be able to access this chassis ground. I really can't anymore. In a van, although I've locked things down really securely, I feel really good about that. Some things sometimes come loose and it's good to just go through and check things and tighten them up again. I no longer have access to do so. If I wanted to rip apart a good chunk of my van build, I could, but it's not worth it. So just consider if you're wanting to tighten things up, put them where you can access them. And here's that electrical wall I talked about. This, I'm so glad with this, honestly. I ended up getting this cut specifically to this area, and I was both proud of how well it fit and the idea for it. The other thing I'm really glad that I did was use plus nuts. I've used plus nuts throughout my van and I have found them to be incredibly stable. They support things so nicely. I feel so confident in their use of them and the way they've just supported my overall build of wood structures into the van. They just lend more staying power than just doing a screw right into the sheet metal, and they also can be remaneuvered, if you will. You know, if I take out these bolts and I can move things around. I really like that. 10 out of 10 recommend plus nuts in the van build. Also, side note, this Easy Cool I very much recommend for a thermal bridge too. It is a huge difference in the Arizona heat of plain metal to wood versus this Easy Cool to wood. I've tested it out. Easy Cool all the way, baby. And here's another thing I would not do. I would not bother using this mold protection slash prevention. I think it's a great idea. I think in the right places it might be best for someone. But to do this to every piece of wood that I end up using in the van was just not worth it to me. And I think this was the first and last project I ended up using this on. Now, the polyurethane or the varthane, I can't remember what it's called, but I definitely protect every wood piece. Keep that in mind. And I'm also proud of this idea where I use that scrap wood to make a little hidey hole and using cleats for my battery box. This battery box is so stable. I've never had any issues with it. These batteries are enclosed so perfectly. The straps honestly are a little extra, but I am glad I did them. I would do the straps again. I would also put the straps down before the batteries. If you saw that video, they're 50 pounds each, so keep that in mind when you're moving them all the time. But because of that weight and because they're secured so nicely, plus the straps, moving around in the van, these babies don't move. They don't jostle. My van's a little earthquake, but we are fine. So that wraps up where we're at on the van build series here with the video. So thanks so much for watching. I hope this helped you.